I think it is their strongest argument. The law forbids racial profiling and says you can't stop anybody based on their race. It used to say, when it was first drafted, it said you can't, question anybody solely because of race. Now it says you can't use race at all. So if they tried to use profiling, I think it would have the text of the law would have defeated that argument. They made their best argument. I'm not sure it's going to hold water. I mean, the laws have been passed by Arizona before in other states that dealt with some piece of immigration that were upheld on appeal. So I think that this thing has a very good chance of withstanding appeal. What drives me absolutely crazy about this whole debate is this law is really quite mild. It isn't a profiling law, and it really isn't a very strong law enforcement issue. It just isn't. And the burden it would place on the federal government, if there were one, would be quite modest. And this is really much ado about not very much.
If it is much ado about not very much, Mara, why did the Obama White House decide to make a fight about it?
I think the Obama White House made a fight about it for a number of reasons. One, it does, in their mind, usurp federal law, so it's a constitutional question. Also, I think that they do want to show Hispanic voters that even if they can't pass a comprehensive law this year, they are going to stand up against rules that constituency and a lot of Democrats find egregious. I do think that it's interesting, though. The politics of this are a lot more complicated than at first thought. First, it looks like, oh, terrible for Democrats because this law is popular across the country. I think in Arizona, where there are 3 incumbent Democratic congressmen, it is going to be a real problem for them. However, if you look at 2 other races, the governor's races in California and Texas, Meg Whitman right now is running Spanish-language billboards saying how she opposes the Arizona law and opposes Prop 187, which was the famous California initiative that Pete Wilson rode to victory, but then created a huge backlash against.
So this is a California Republican running for governor opposing the crackdown.
And in Texas, Rick Perry is the Republican governor running against Bill White, the Democratic former mayor of Houston, and that race has closed since this law began, and many people attribute it to a backlash against it. So there's just some complicating evidence.
Bill.
Yeah, and the great thing about the federal system is there are 50 states, and Republicans in different states can say, honestly, take different positions. I'm not sure I would vote for this law in Virginia. We have very different circumstances than they do in Arizona. But what's striking about it, I looked at the polls on this last night, this law was always popular by about 3-2 when it was polled in May, when it first into the news. Its popularity has increased. That is, the popularity of the Arizona law has increased. The unpopularity of the Obama administration's position
Let me just quickly put up on the screen. This is a Fox News poll out this week, and what it shows is that overall, Americans approve of the Arizona law by a margin of 52% to 27%, so basically 2-1. I will add, though, Hispanics, Bill, oppose the law overall around the country by a margin of about 4-1.
Right, but that 52-27 is interesting. It was 50-32 about 2 or 3 weeks before. So in other words, the number is increasing. And this reminds me of health care. We're having a big national debate. Voters are learning more about it. And more voters are more pro-Arizona as it goes on. That is bad for the Obama administration. I mean, people in Washington tend to assume if only we could just educate them a little more and, and give some more speeches around the country, we'll change their mind. And that's been very much the Obama administration's view on stimulus, on health care, and now on Arizona, on immigration. And I think it's not going to work. And I think this is foolish of the Obama administration. I think it's bad law. And it, above all, shows a disrespect. I think when in doubt,
bad law meaning that
bad law. I mean, I think it's, I'm sorry, the bad lawsuit. And also, it shows a disrespect for democracy. When in doubt, let the voters and let the state legislatures have their way. If there's a clear abrogation of someone's individual right, of course, then the federal government can step in. This is at best, a very murky case. And instead of waiting for the law to go into effect, instead of taking the attitude of let's see what happens with the private lawsuits that have been filed, the Obama administration is stepping in and trying to override the democratically legislated laws of Arizona.
Why?
This is an important lawsuit. I think you cannot have a patchwork of laws around the country. And I think it does appeal politically to the Hispanic community, which feels that the Obama administration has not lived up to its promise to deliver on immigration reform. Overall, the anger is at Washington. Why have Republicans and Democrats not cooperated to get something done? It seems as if people, in some sense, like the status quo, like not having a resolution to this issue, like having 12 and 13 million illegal immigrants in the country.
Wait a minute, do you really believe that?
Well, they must, because they're not doing anything about it. And I think that's the impatience and the anxiety that's coming out of people in Arizona. I think especially older white voters who are, saying, look, the country's changing.
10 seconds.
There is a consensus on this in the public, which is seal the border first, and all these other things can come later.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, panel. See you next week. Don't forget to check out the